If you buy fat for your ration, or you grow the beans that fat competes with, stop what you're doing and look at this number. $800 a ton. That's what one Wisconsin dairy was paying for the palm fat going into their cows. Then it climbed. $900, $1,200, $1,500 a ton, nearly doubled on a product that didn't grow within 4,000 miles of that barn. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly who was cashing in on that squeeze, what this family did to shut the invoice off, and why it matters to you, even if you never own a single cow. Stick with me to the end, because the part that actually pays, the part for the grower, comes last. And I want your take on it down in the comments. Here's the thing. This is Golden E Dairy, out of Kewaskum, Wisconsin. The LB family. Chris and his son Ryan, milking somewhere around 2,900 cows. And for years, they were doing what a lot of operations do. Reaching for a purchased fat source to hold their butterfat up. Imported palm fat. Comes from overseas, off a boat. And the price is set by people who have never once stood in that farmer's bunk. When that number ran from $800 a ton to $1,500, quite frankly, somebody on the other end of that supply chain did just fine. It wasn't the farmer. Now, before I go further, if you run a bunk or you've got bushels in the bin, do yourself a favor and hit subscribe. Because these input squeezes don't announce themselves. Nobody mails you a letter that says your fat cost just doubled. You find it on the invoice after the fact. This channel calls it out before the deadline, and I do a comment on where you're watching from. So drop your state below. I want to know what your part of the country's paying. So what did Chris do? He didn't complain about it and eat it. In all honesty, he read his way into a solution. Sat at the kitchen table, going through the farm, magazines, cover to cover, and landed on high oleic soybeans. Pioneer's Plenish beans. The idea is simple, even if the setup isn't. Instead of buying an imported fat, you grow a fat source on your own ground. You roast those beans right there on the farm, and you feed them back. Homegrown fat, homegrown protein, and the price is set by your own dirt instead of a shipping lane. Ryan will tell you straight, when his dad announced they were planting Plenish, he didn't even know what it was. But they went all in. Started conservative, about 400 acres, that first season. And here's your first real number that tells you it worked. Today, they're running roughly 1,400 acres of high oleic beans. Some grown themselves, the rest sourced from neighbors. You don't triple down on something that's costing you money. That acreage jump is the tell. But acres alone don't prove the case. For that, you go to the guy running the ration. Their veterinary nutritionist, Monty Belmer, put actual figures on it. First year, the savings ran close to 50 cents a cow. It settled in around 25 to 28 cents in the diet once the dust cleared. And that's the important part. Because those beans let them knock out two expensive line items at once. They displaced some of the ruminal bypass protein, which is never cheap, and they displaced a big chunk of that imported fat. Salt in the wound for the overseas supplier, and money back in the farmer's pocket. And it wasn't just cost. The cows responded. Belmer says when they bring cattle onto that oleic oil, they'll typically see about 0.2 of a butterfat increase. On this herd, butterfat climbed from around 4.2% up to 4.5%, and it held there even through the heat of summer, when butterfat usually sags. Energy-corrected milk went up. Protein ticked up. Now, let me ask you, because you know your own operation, where's your break-even sitting this year? And would 0.2 of a point of butterfat move the needle for you? Tell me below. Here's a loop I want to open before we get to the payoff. Because I know the objection. This sounds expensive. Roasting system, storage bins, a whole processing setup the barn wasn't built for. Ryan will be the first to tell you it is not plug and play. It takes babysitting. You've got pods, stems, and Lord forbid a stone in there, and there's a real fire risk. This is not free money. So hold that thought, because the ROI number is where this whole story turns. Ryan went into it expecting a 5-year payback. That's his normal bar for a capital investment. 5 years, and he's comfortable. When he first penciled the cost of this roasting setup, He wasn't even sure the return would be there at all. And then they turned it on. Here's the gold. Once that system was running, once you factor in the milk production, the component gains, and the fat they stopped buying off the boat, that investment essentially paid for itself inside 12 to 18 months. Not 5 years. A year to a year and a half. The payback came far faster than they ever expected, because the imported fat was bleeding them harder than the spreadsheet showed on paper. So here's the read. And this is for you, the grower, not just the dairyman. 2 things. 1, this is a demand story hiding inside a feed story. High oleic, identity-preserved beans like Plenish are getting pulled off farms and roasted locally, cow by cow, acre by acre. A home market pull that's got nothing to do with the China headlines or the ethanol print. If you've got a dairy or a roaster within hauling distance, that's a conversation about contracting high oleic acres worth having before you just dump everything as straight commodity. Ask what the identity preserved program actually pays. And 2, the bigger lesson, every input you buy off a boat is a price somebody else controls. When palm fat nearly doubled, the farmer who owned his fat source won, and the one still writing the check got raked over the coals. Control what you can grow. That's the whole play. So tell me, is there a roaster or a dairy near you already bidding on beans like this? And are you in that market or selling straight commodity? Put it in the comments. If this was worth your time, hit like, subscribe so the next input squeeze doesn't catch you flat. And I'll see you in the next video.